Nostradamus. The mere mention of the man's name brings to mind images of apocalypse and Armageddon. Without doubt, he is viewed by many as a prophet of uncanny accuracy. Nostradamus' best known writings are his prophecies. He embarked on this work in the city of Ceylon in the mid-16th century. The work consists of divisions called centuries, not to be confused with the century as a length of time, and within these centuries we find Nostradamus' mysterious and fascinating quatrains, which are basically four-lined prophecies that are written in poetic style. Nostradamus wrote his works during the time of the Black Death, which killed over a quarter of those living in Europe at this time. The darkness and despair of this horrific period in history is clearly seen as being an influence on his writing style. Nostradamus used an occult practice known as scrying to obtain his visions of the future. Now, this method consists of basically staring into a reflective object such as a crystal ball, a mirror or a bowl of water until a vision comes forth. Nostradamus used the shiny surface of water while surrounding himself by candles, ready to write down whatever things were revealed to him. Although Nostradamus has been hailed as a true prophet without parallel, and his works have been continuously in print since the mid-16th century, when we look at his writings carefully, it soon becomes apparent that his works are actually very difficult to understand. His prophecies do not unfold chronologically, so are, more often than not, difficult to put into any clear chronological context. Most of Nostradamus' quatrains deal with devastation and disasters such as plagues, earthquakes, wars, floods, invasions, murders, droughts, famines and battles. Many people believe that Nostradamus predicted the coming of Hitler, even coming close to naming the man but just being off by one letter, which we'll look at in a moment. It is also argued that he predicted the Nazi swastika, penicillin, nuclear energy, the devastation of AIDS, the fall of communism, and the assassination of JFK, and a world ruler in 2012. But is Nostradamus really a reliable source for predicting what will occur in the future? Let's turn to a few select examples of Nostradamus' quatrains and see if they hold up to scrutiny. Probably the most famous of all Nostradamus' prophecies is the information he records, which many believe predict the rise of Adolf Hitler. Many believe that Nostradamus predicted the rise of three great antichrists, one of which was Adolf Hitler, and people claim that Nostradamus got his name right, or almost right. He was wrong by just one letter. Quatrain 3:35 states, quote, "From the very depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who by his tongue will seduce a great troop, his fame will increase towards the realm of the east." End quote. Quatrain 2:24 is one of the most chilling prophecies. Quote, "Beasts ferocious from hunger will swim across rivers. The great part of the region will be against the Hista. The great one will cause it to be dragged in an iron cage, when the German child will observe nothing." End quote. Probably the most significant problem with this alleged prophecy is that even though the word Hista does sound similar to Hitler, with the exception of being off by one letter, it is almost certain that this isn't a reference to any person's name at all, but rather the location of a place. In fact, during the time of Nostradamus, the word Hista was in common usage to describe the Danube River, and Nostradamus himself uses the term as such elsewhere throughout his writings. In contrast to this, if we really want to see a good example of a prophecy that does accurately predict the name of an individual who came in history, we can look to the biblical prophet Isaiah. Writing around 700 BC, he mentions the Medo-Persian king by his actual name, and he gets it right, Cyrus. This is recorded around 100 years prior to the coming of Cyrus, and nearly 150 years before his reign. Quote, It is I who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and he will perform all my desire. And he declares of Jerusalem, she will be built, and of the temple your foundation will be laid. Thus says the Lord to Cyrus, his anointed, whom I have taken by the right hand to subdue nations before him. End quote. Isaiah 44 verse 28 to Isaiah 45 and verse 1. Cyrus is clearly referred to in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 2 and verse 25, but here he is specifically named. Isaiah 45 verses 2 to 6 goes on to predict the conquests of Cyrus. So this coming of Cyrus prophecy is just one example of the many accurately fulfilled prophecies that we find recorded in the Bible, in contrast to the vague writings of Nostradamus. Some have attempted to link quatrain 163 with the post-World War II era. Quote, "Pestilences extinguished, the world becomes smaller. For a long time the lands will be inhabited peacefully. People will travel safely through the sky, over land and seas. Then wars will start up again." End quote. While it is certainly possible to see a picture of some aspects of the post-war era in this quatrain, the peace that Nostradamus speaks of certainly didn't last a long time, and pestilence and diseases were most definitely not extinguished. Turning to more recent history, Nostradamus records a prophecy about the year 1999 in Century 10, Quatrain 72. This prophecy is of particular interest because whereas the majority of Nostradamus' writings are vague and could be applied to a variety of events in history, here we have a specific year, 1999, and even a month, July, where we are told that something very significant is meant to occur. This is one of the rare prophecies of Nostradamus that is of a more specific nature and so can be tested more easily. Here's what the quatrain says, quote, "The year 1999, 7th month, from the sky will come a great king of terror, to bring back to life the great king of the Mongols, before and after Mars, to reign by good luck." End quote. There are a variety of suggestions as to what this prophecy was meant to have fulfilled, but the truth is, nothing significant really happened. Probably the most notable thing that has been suggested was the solar eclipse that occurred in 1999, but this didn't happen in the 7th month of July, as the Nostradamus text states, but rather in the 8th month of August. Right year, wrong month. Close, but a close prediction is not a fulfilled prediction, but rather a failed one. The truth is, nothing could really be pointed to as the dramatic events that Nostradamus foretold would come to pass in July 1999. Nothing significant happened, and many of us are alive today to testify to this fact. Some claim that Nostradamus accurately foretold of the destruction of the Twin Towers in New York on 9/11. There are various quatrains from Nostradamus that quickly began circulating on the internet and in the media as evidence that he predicted this event in advance of it happening. However, many of these quatrains are often sliced and spliced by proponents of Nostradamus in an attempt to make them fit better. And furthermore, many have even given Nostradamus a helping hand by inserting their own words that were not even part of Nostradamus' original text. Here are a couple of examples of how some presented Nostradamus' prophecies in the media and on the internet soon after the 9/11 attack. "In the year of the new century and 9 months, from the sky will come a great king of terror. The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches the great new city. In the city of York there will be a great collapse. 2 twin brothers torn apart by chaos. While the fortress fails, the great leader will succumb. 3rd big war will begin when the big city is burning." Another example, "It has been foreseen that exactly 350 years into the future, silver phoenixes shall strike down the twin brothers of oppression that carried the king's nation, which shall bring upon the apocalypse. In the city of God there will be a great thunder. two brothers torn apart by chaos. Now, impressive though these prophecies initially sound, as they do bear an uncanny resemblance of what happened on 9/11, the bubble is soon popped when one discovers that Nostradamus didn't even actually write this stuff at all, but rather an over-enthusiastic or maybe even deliberately deceitful person has taken his words and altered and tweaked them to better make them fit the event. There is no mention of silver phoenixes flying down, and they don't say in the year of the new century and 9 months, but rather in the year 1999 and 7 months from the skies shall come an alarming powerful king. It's actually 1072. There is also no mention of twin brothers being torn apart. Nostradamus actually said, quote, "Two royal brothers shall war so much one against the other," essentially 397. What about there being a great collapse in the city of York, or the reference to burning and the words fortress and third big war? Again, this is what the quatrain actually says, quote, "The heaven shall burn at 45 degrees, the fire shall come near the great new city, when they shall make a trial of the Normans," end quote, essentially 697. So as can be seen, Nostradamus' prophecies, when they are quoted accurately, are often so vague and general that they could be made to fit into numerous historical events throughout the ages. In fact, they're so vague that, as we've just seen, people have to give Nostradamus somewhat of a helping hand by inserting their own words and adding them on and splicing and dicing the text. And when Nostradamus is more specific, as in his July 1999 prophecy, where we can carefully analyse what he said with the actual facts, his prophecies have been shown to pass by without anything significant actually happening. And even if it can be argued that Nostradamus did make some successful prophecies, it still doesn't make him a true prophet. If you make enough random pronouncements about the future, you are bound to eventually say something that sounds as though it will eventually be a fulfillment of something. As the old saying goes, even a clock that isn't working is right twice a day. What about 2012? Some people are starting to connect Nostradamus with this coming date for the end of the world from the Mayan calendar, and say that Nostradamus also predicted this. This comes about due to a lost book, so-called, of Nostradamus that was discovered in 1994 by an Italian journalist, Enzo Massa. The paintings in this lost book are most unusual, displaying images of bizarre animals, clergy, symbols, and half-human and half-animal creatures. Some are claiming that a wheel that appears with these pictures in this book, known as the Wheel of Time, points to the year 2012 for the end of the world. But despite these claims, it isn't easy to connect any of the images in this book with prophetic dates for 2012 or any time for the end of the world or any future event. Like Nostradamus' writings, these pictures are likewise vague and could be interpreted to mean many different things. Some will argue that one of the reasons why Nostradamus' writings and his pictures in his lost book are so vague is because he was seeing things that were so far in the future and so unfamiliar to him that he was struggling to adequately explain them. Now, while this could certainly account for some of the vagueness, one would still expect some clearer connection with the things he claimed to be seeing in the future, and people of today being able to make some identification with them. And you would think that this would be especially so with the drawings in the Lost Book. Although it might be a bitter pill for believers in Nostradamus to swallow, the truth is that he is just one of the many false prophets who have come and gone throughout history. And indeed, in the Bible, Jesus Christ himself warned us in Matthew chapter 24 that false prophets will come. He warned us in advance. Ironically, one of the end time signs is that there will be false prophets, itself a sign of the end times. Deuteronomy chapter 18 warns us that if a prophet comes claiming to be a man of God and predicts future events that do not happen or come to pass, then that person is a false prophet by the biblical standard, and that we should not fear this person or even respect them.